So the church growth in Iowa, um, well, there's no temple in Iowa, and so that tells you that we still need to pick up the pace with the work in Iowa so we can get a temple there. But our mission boundary was about the 3/4 of Iowa to the eastern part. We didn't have the very western part of Iowa. And then it went over into Illinois a little bit, so Nauvoo was included in our mission, and it went down into the northeast corner of Missouri. So we had 6 stakes in our mission, one of those being the Nauvoo stake, and the other stakes were in Iowa. And there's a temple above Iowa in Minnesota. There's a temple in Winter Quarters in Nebraska. There's a temple in Kansas City, and then there's the Nauvoo temple. So we're surrounded by temples, but none in Iowa yet. So yeah, hopefully sometime soon they'll be able to get a temple there. When I first got to Iowa, there was another stake in Illinois, the Peoria, Illinois stake, and then the Chicago West mission was created, and so we lost that stake to the Chicago West mission. So that was kind of interesting, that missionaries that were part of our mission, all of a sudden, after that switch, they're in an entirely different mission. That was kind of interesting adjustment. And of course, made the mission a little bit smaller. It was still a pretty large mission geographically, though, compared to a lot of others. But yeah, there's a lot of spread out wards. There's some small branches, but most of the wards that were there were either in the city or they just had huge boundaries. Like, takes a couple hours to get from one edge of the ward to the other, which is much different than, it's quite an adjustment for most missionaries. It's much different than we're used to, being from the western United States. There were some towns in Iowa that had more Spanish population, so we had a few Spanish-speaking missionaries. I want to say roughly 30, counting elders and sisters, that were Spanish-speaking, and they usually served in just a few different towns where there was higher Spanish population. So they usually ended up teaching a little bit of English and Spanish, which I think is common in a lot of stateside Spanish. For Spanish missionaries that serve stateside, is they kind of teach a little bit of both, depending on the area. So that's how it was. I had one companion who was a Spanish-speaking, so we were called a zebra companionship because I was English-speaking, he was Spanish-speaking. I got to serve in pretty good-sized wards. My whole mission, I was in more city areas, but there were some branches that were really small. Like one of them was mostly made up of just one family, and they met in a barn for Sunday meetings. There was another branch that met in just an old house for Sunday meetings. So there were definitely some small branches. I served in wards that one of the wards I served in was one of the biggest in the mission. Sometimes we'd get close to 250 to sacrament meeting, which was pretty big. But like I said, the other wards I served in were not quite that big, but they were pretty good sized wards. But it just varied. It varied quite a bit. There was definitely some really small branches. The religious atmosphere of Iowa, there's a lot of Christian people in Iowa, just really good, kind Christian people, which is a great thing. But some of them are very, very tied to their church and very, very set in their beliefs and in what they already have. And so a lot of times they think that they don't really need anything more. And so a lot of times they would respect us, but they wouldn't really have any interest in talking to us. And so there's kind of some good and some bad with having a very heavily Christian influenced community. But that, for the most part, there's a lot of Christians in Iowa. I've worked mostly with people who are from West Africa, some refugees from West Africa, and they were pretty much all Christian. There was a lot that were Muslim, but of course we didn't really spend much time talking to them. But we worked a lot with the Christians who were from West Africa, and so most of the people that we taught had a faith in Christ and wanted to learn more if they weren't already, very, very connected to their church. As far as church history in Iowa, there's a lot because of the pioneers traveling from Nauvoo to Utah. So they traveled right through Iowa, the hand carts and things like that. And something that's interesting is they spent about half their time getting through Iowa. It spent about just as long to get through Iowa as it did the rest of the trip, because the mud in Iowa is so thick that it's hard to get through. And we actually had an experience getting stuck in the mud in Iowa, and we felt like it was a true pioneer experience, besides the fact that we had a car that we were driving. But I can definitely attest to the thick mud of Iowa, because we got our car stuck just like the pioneers would have got a hand cart stuck. But yeah, there's great church history, and there's several. There's like a Mormon Trails Association of Iowa or something like that. And interesting fact about that is most of the people that work for that or that are a part of that are not members of the church. And so it's more a part of the state's history as much as it is a part of church history, really, because it's viewed by a lot of people who aren't members of the church as well. Something else that's pretty cool is the hymn "Come, Come Ye Saints" was written in Iowa. And so, of course, we use that hymn a lot in different meetings and things like that. And so for me, I really enjoyed that. Getting to go to Nauvoo a few times on my mission and learning more about the pioneer heritage. It really strengthened my testimony and my appreciation for the pioneers and for what they did. So I really was excited about that being a part of our mission culture, was having that there. So I served in, the first area was Muscatine, Iowa. Is right on the Mississippi. It's kind of a smaller factory town. There was a good sized ward there, which was great, but the town itself had probably a little over 20,000 people. And then I served in Cedar Rapids, which I think is maybe the fourth largest city in Iowa. They don't have very large cities in Iowa. Even Des Moines itself is not, compared to some cities around here. So I served in Cedar Rapids, and then I served in Des Moines for the remainder of my mission. So yeah, I served, just kind of got bigger as I went along the cities.